Hello and welcome to your monthly horoscope for April for the Sun or the Ascendant. Now I'm going to give you a broad overview of what to expect before diving deep and exploring each of the 12 zodiac signs in forensic detail. So please stay with me for that analysis. Now the big takeout of this month is that we have 2 new moons, and when this happens, the second is known as the Black Moon. The first new moon is on the 1st in the go-getting sign of Aries, but it combines with Mercury, the planet of ideas, the planet of communication. Aries energy is about initiation and fresh starts. Let's hope some fresh energy is coming through in a constructive way for us all. The second new moon is in Taurus, the next sign on from Aries, because the Sun moves on into Taurus on the 20th. Now this one is in a sextile with the ruler of Aries, Mars. But Mars moves into the sign of Pisces on the 15th. Now Mars moving through Pisces can be a very meditative, or our actions can be very much behind the scenes. Sometimes people who are involved in enterprises such as mining or deep sea diving have Mars in Pisces in their natal chart. So we can expect some things going on behind the scenes that could be positive. And Mars is also in a conjunction with Saturn in the first 9 days. Now Mars in Capricorn, as it was, especially in its conjunction with Pluto, which became exact on the 3rd of March, is a very, very challenging influence. And we know that there has been an outbreak of violence in the very heart of Europe, which is deeply troubling. But once Mars moved on the 6th of March into the sign of Aquarius, and now at the start of this month is combining with the co-ruler of Aquarius, Saturn, there's a much greater desire, I think, collectively to try to get things working in a way which may not be perfect, but is certainly better than that real fight for power that has been imposed at, the latter end of February and the early parts of March. And one of the very uplifting parts of this month's energies is that Neptune and Jupiter, the 2 co-regents of Pisces, are in a conjunction within 3 degrees through the whole month. And on the 12th, that becomes absolutely exact. I think that that can be a very healing dimension. I really pray so. Also, Venus moves into Aries on the 5th. Now, Venus in Aries is, to be honest, in detriment. But I actually have always liked Venus in Aries because I think it gives us an impulse to try to relate. To take the first move, not to sit back and wait. So for me, that can be very positive. But on the 11th, Mercury does move from Aries into the sign of Taurus. Now it is going to be clashing with with Pluto from the 9th through to the 12th. And that clash of Plutonian energy still in the sign of Capricorn through to 23, part-time goes into Aquarius, then moves into Aquarius in 24, and we really get the start of the Aquarius age, I feel. But we also have the Sun mirroring the right angle with Pluto at the heart of this month, and then that brings in the full moon on the 16th in the sign of Libra. So we have a T-square going between Pluto, the Sun and the moon, and I think that's going to be an interesting point of how there's a pushback against power being used in the wrong way. And the combination of Neptune and Jupiter, which after all, Jupiter is about hope, Neptune can be about healing, but in their home signs, I'm really hoping that there will be a fundamental pushback at the heart of this month, which does see an improvement in Central Europe. Now on the 20th, we do see the Sun, as I mentioned before, moving into Taurus, and then on the 29th, Pluto slams on the brakes. So obviously Uranus was still in retrograde at the start of this year, but this is the first of the big beasts going into their annual retrogrades, and it's going to go on until the 7th of October. This is going to be really interesting, I feel, because the sign of Capricorn is about old power. The sign of Aquarius is much more about taking the best of that old power, but being enlightened about new techniques, being more inclusive. So Pluto going into a retrograde will be interesting for certain political strands in the world. You know, people who've held power in a much more authoritarian way could retreat, or perhaps just reset their purposes. But on the 29th, Mercury does move into its home zone of Gemini, and that can be a really brilliant point for much more communication starting to ping around. Also, the 30th, that wonderful Taurus new moon is in a very positive angle with Mars, suggesting that if we actually take the best of what we already know, or what's been evolving over a very long period of time, which is Mars coming through in its journey. Obviously it moves at the heart of this month into the sign of Pisces, so by the end of May it's going to be readying to go into Gemini, where it's going to be for the rest of the year, because it goes through, and into the first months of next year, because it goes through a retrograde. But I think that what we're going to see as this month comes to a close is much more constructive, workable ways of approaching some of the transitions that may have gone on this month. Now, if you are new to my channel, thank you so much for listening so far. Please, I'd be delighted if you would subscribe. Please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. And if you'd like to get your free written daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, please subscribe on the link below. It'd be great to have you with me. And also, if you'd like to get your 12-month forecast and character analysis based on your time, date and place of birth, and ascend above your zodiac sign, and really get much greater understanding of what makes you tick and your potentials in the time ahead, there is 30% off with my special offer. Please see the link for that below too. Hello Aries, and welcome to your monthly horoscope for April. There are 3 big themes for you this month. One of them is very much to do with setting your sights on some fresh, new and energized approaches that really are speaking to you, especially at the start of the month, in the combination of that new moon in your sign and Mercury, and that really can set your creative juices bubbling away. But you know, there's also a tremendous amount of activity this month, Aries, in the most nostalgic and reflective part of your horoscope. And that's coming from the fact that on the 5th, Venus, the planet of love and affection, moves into the sign of Pisces. It's going to be connecting with Neptune, one of the 2 rulers of the sign, in the last 5 days of this month too. And that could see you thinking very deeply about past experiences, past people. But there's also a potential to reinforce some ongoing strands that are important to your future, because Saturn's bolstering your ruler Mars in the first 9 days in your sector of the future, of friendships. Now, when Mars and Saturn get together, we do need to narrow our focus in order to be effective. Otherwise, we can dissipate our energy, because Saturn is almost like the brake on Mars's desire to move forwards, which is the throttle. So spreading ourselves too thinly doesn't work. So because you've got 3 clear areas of activity this month, future forward, dynamic, individual energy coming from the sign of Aries and that new moon, you have the ongoing stuff with Mars combining with Saturn and your longer term hopes, and a huge welter of energy in your 12th house, which is not just from Venus moving into that sector on the 5th, it's also because Jupiter and Neptune, the 2 rulers of Pisces, are pretty well in a conjunction within 3 degrees for the whole of the month, and that becomes exact on the 12th. Also, your ruler Mars moves into Pisces too on the 15th. So this is going to take some skill to negotiate. And then later this month we have a fourth arena developing, which is much more to do with resources, to do with everyday finance, to do with self-worth. But let's go back right to the beginning of this month. So Mercury is about how we think, but it can be how we express ideas. We can be quite nimble when it's in a conjunction with the sun and the moon in that new moon. And, you know, it can give you a lot of enthusiasm. And I think that's something to really embrace. Also, on the 11th, Mercury moves out of your sign and into Taurus. So there's that hint of converting ideas into something more tangible. We also have a clash really between the Sun and Pluto, and also Mercury and Pluto at the heart of this month, and that brings us to the full moon in your opposite sign of Libra on the 16th, which embraces the clash between the Sun and Pluto too. So we have a T-square. Now Libran energy is about relating, your energy is about initiating, and Pluto is about power, and that's in the sign of dominance and the sign of authority, Capricorn. So your future prospects have to work best, I feel, by being inclusive with others. Because if you try to go it alone in a very singular way, which is one of your great traits, I think there could be some psychological stuff that is washing around in the mix, particularly when Mars moves into your 12th house on the 15th, which could surprise you, and it can slow you down, bog you down, distract you, and it can be harder to gain traction. So keeping the goodwill of others will be very important, and that may mean that you do have to collaborate with people you don't necessarily like or wouldn't necessarily call a friend, but just keeping the lines of communication open with all the people you have to interact with, whether it's people who are close to you, people in a more professional context, is going to be a smart thing to do. Now on the 20th, the Sun's arrival in the sign of Taurus sees it join up with Uranus, the North Node, and of course Mercury. Mercury is actually not hanging around for long because it's moving on the 29th into the sign of Gemini, where it absolutely loves being. So expect your mind to be stepping up a gear as this month draws to a close. But that power broker Pluto does go into a retrograde on the 29th. So those long-term physical goals and ambitions, which are represented for you by the sign of Capricorn, are being potentially tethered back a little bit. But I think a lot of this is because of the big energy that's going on in the back of your situation. So you can put a lot of thrust into the opening part of this month with the support of that new moon in your sign. You may be able to make progress on your longer term plans as long as you're very applied to them and don't spread yourself too thinly. You need to be conscious of the psychological dimension in your situation and relationships of all kinds on the back of that full moon. And then the energy at the end of this month is asking you really to be very grounded in your approach to how you spend money, your attitude to your self-worth, your values. All these things really come under the astral microscope in a big way. And it may be necessary for all of us to become much more conscious that quite a few commodities are not going to get cheaper. All this political tension in the world is all to do with leverage. You know, it's to do with certain countries having resources, and that's the backbone of their economies, but it's been used in a political way, and so that's having an impact on all us ordinary citizens. So I think your ingenuity or ability to fall back on past skills, experiences, knowledge, or even contacts is going to be quite crucial to how you start forming up a more stable basis for your situation as this month draws to a close. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me. Please stay safe and goodbye for now.